Hey guys, tonight we're ripping open the silk curtains on one of the most decadent, controlled and frankly bizarre corners of world history, Imperial China's bedroom politics. And guess what? You're not just visiting, you're about to become the emperor. Yeah, you, sitting there in your sweatpants. But before you get too comfortable on that jade throne, let's be crystal clear, you probably won't survive this. Not just because of the scheming concubines, overambitious eunuchs and relentless rituals, but because managing a harem of thousands while balancing political power and ancient beliefs about sex could be more deadly than battle. So, before your head swells with imperial ego, take a second to like this video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy my brand of historical insanity. Oh, and drop your city and what time it is where you are. I'm genuinely curious where all my time-traveling emperors are tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The Imperial Night, roster, ritual, and risky business. You're reclining in the Hall of Mental Cultivation, the Emperor's private quarters, deep within the Forbidden City. The air smells faintly of sandalwood and lamp oil. Outside, court officials are still scurrying like ants beneath the blood-orange dusk. But in here, everything slows. Your night isn't about reports or rebellion. It's about the roster. And yes, there's a literal bedroom roster. Your concubines, numbering in the thousands during peak dynasties like the Tang and Qing, are catalogued, ranked and rotated with bureaucratic precision. A select few get summoned each night. The selection isn't random. Oh no, it's a process involving wooden name tags stored in a tray called the upupai, each inscribed with a woman's name and kept chilled in silver basins. Eunuchs pick them up, announce your choice, and then brace yourself. They carry the chosen concubine, wrapped in a silk-covered blanket to your bedchamber. Yep, carried like a sleepy burrito. This ensures she doesn't sneak in poison, weapons, or, heaven forbid, pregnancy-enhancing charms. And she better be healthy. Before she even makes it to you, she's been inspected, bathed, perfumed, and often judged by a physician to ensure she's not secretly menstruating. Because in traditional Chinese medicine, that was a big cosmic no. Cosmic order and concubine combat. Everything about imperial sex is wrapped in ritual. From the hour it occurs, always scheduled around lucky times, to the direction the bed faces. You, the son of heaven, must channel harmony through your essence. This isn't just pleasure, it's politics, metaphysics, and a full-time job. It's hard to imagine now, but for many emperors the act of sex wasn't even for personal gratification. It was duty, a sacred obligation to balance the universe through intercourse. You're not just getting busy, you're maintaining cosmic order. And that pressure, yeah, it piles up. You might have your favorite concubines, maybe the soft-voiced Lady Jiao or the feisty Lady Li, but you can't always pick them. You have to spread your yang energy strategically across the harem, matching yin and yang according to Taoist charts. Too much with one girl, and your life force might weaken. Too little, and the empire's rice harvest could fail. You think I'm exaggerating? Taoist sex manuals, some stretching back to the Han Dynasty, warned against reckless indulgence. Too much climax, they said, drained your jing, your vital essence, and could bring about your early death. Sleep with moderation or die. Sexily. Of course, not every emperor obeyed. Some practically held record-breaking sex marathons like Emperor Wu of Jin, who supposedly dropped dead mid-coitus. A fact? Maybe. A moralistic tale passed down by disapproving Confucian historians? Also likely. Scholars still debate whether these death-by-lust stories were true, or just warnings about the dangers of decadence and distraction from proper governance. It's the ancient version of a tabloid headline, Emperor found dead with favourite concubine, but written in calligraphy on bamboo scrolls. The art of survival, from bedmate to power broker. So here you are, lying back on jade pillows, while a concubine boos before you, eyes lowered, hands trembling slightly. Not necessarily with fear, but with calculation, because for her, this isn't just a night of intimacy, it's a potential promotion. A single pregnancy could mean elevation from low-ranking maid to noble mother of a future emperor. But don't get too comfortable. That same pregnancy could make her a target. poisoned teas, suspicious miscarriages, disappearing servants. It's all part of life in the harem, and it's your job to keep track of it all, or delegate that task to a clever eunuch who probably knows more about your sex life than you do. The harem isn't some free-for-all either. There's a strict hierarchy. The empress stands at the top, followed by imperial consorts, noble concubines, and then the long list of barely seen women whose lives revolve around the hope of a single night with you. Some will live and die in the palace without ever being summoned. Others will rise meteorically, like Consort Yang, whose beauty was said to make flowers blush, and whose favour with Emperor Xuanzong sparked jealousy, war, and eventually rebellion. That's the kind of emotional stakes we're talking about. Bureaucracy in the bedroom, the eunuch's eye. Want a quirky twist? The emperor didn't even get to initiate things on a whim. He couldn't just say, "Hey, I'm in the mood." Sex was logged in official court records. Yes, that means bureaucrats kept a detailed account of who you slept with and when. Like a cosmic HR department. These records mattered for genealogy, succession, and even tax purposes. Having a legitimate heir wasn't just about preference, it was a matter of state. And of course, surrounding all this was the heavy air of ritual. The imperial bedroom was silent, but for the rustle of robes, the distant clang of bronze bells marking the hour, and the faint murmur of prayers to the ancestors. You'd think with all the pressure, the act itself would be tense, maybe even awkward. And it often was. For the concubine, one misstep could mean banishment. For you, a scandal. Yet somehow, within these tight margins, passion occasionally bloomed, though it often came with strings attached. So, as you lie there, blinking up at a carved dragon hovering above your canopy bed, consider this. Absolute power might let you summon beauty at will, but pleasure here isn't simple. It's political theatre, it's metaphysical ritual, it's personal danger. You've got 3,000 women vying for your attention, but not one person you can trust fully, except maybe that one old eunuch who's been with you since you were 10. And even he's been known to gossip. And this is just your first night. The morning after. Immortality, alchemy, and absurdity. You wake to the scent of lotus blossom lingering in the air and the gentle tapping of bronze bells outside the window screens. Morning light filters through the silk curtains, golden and diffuse. The concubine is already gone, whisked away by eunuchs before dawn to prevent any unauthorized loitering, or the possibility of tampering with imperial bloodlines. She'll be examined, debriefed, and returned to her designated quarters. You, meanwhile, stretch out in the center of the enormous bed, feeling both godlike and oddly hollow. It's another day in the life of the emperor, and you're already behind schedule. Today's business is not with ministers or border conflicts, but with something far older and harder to control, your own mortality. You've heard the rumors. Emperors don't just die of illness or assassins. They fade away, drained by desire and worn thin by centuries of ritual. You don't want to be remembered as another exhausted ruler, found sprawled across silk sheets, lips blue, with a scroll of Taoist sex teachings curled in your hand. So you do what so many before you have done. You consult the alchemists. They arrive in sweeping robes, smelling of ash and dried herbs, carrying jars of glowing powders and scrolls inscribed with looping symbols. Their pitch is always the same. Immortality lies not in stone or sword, but in your own body. Harness your jing, they say. Refine your essence, control your urges, and most importantly, don't spill your seed too often. That's where your power lies. You're skeptical, but not dismissive. After all, you've read about Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor, unifier of China, absolute powerhouse of paranoia and ambition. He was obsessed with immortality. The man ordered the construction of a massive necropolis guarded by 8,000 life-sized terracotta soldiers, just in case the afterlife required backup. He also reportedly died after ingesting mercury pills. An ironic twist, considering mercury was supposed to make him live forever. The jade stalk and the golden gate, Taoist tantra with bureaucracy, and yet you get it. The idea of death coming for someone with divine blood seems ridiculous. You're the axis between heaven and earth, the literal son of heaven. How can the natural world touch you? Unless, of course, You're leaking your life force nightly into embroidered pillows and overworked concubines. So you study. The Taoist texts from the Han and Tang dynasties are especially illuminating, if also confusing. They describe immortality as a kind of internal war, battles between yin and yang, semen and breath, desire and discipline. You learn about the practice of Fang Zhongshu, the arts of the bedchamber, where sex is treated not as pleasure but as medicine and ritual. According to these guides, ejaculation is a loss. But intercourse without release? That's mastery. You're meant to draw out the yin energy of the woman, absorb it, circulate it through your own body and emerge more virile than before. Basically, tantric trick sex, but with added bureaucracy. The pressure to perform this balance is enormous. The court physicians track your vitality, and your closest eunuchs, who have their own whispered access to secret texts, remind you not to waste the dragon's essence. In a strange way, even your desire has been nationalized. You begin to wonder if pleasure is just another mask for work. One fringe theory you encounter suggests that sexual energy can be redirected to fuel magical abilities. Clairvoyance, prophetic dreams, even flight. You don't really believe it, but part of you wants to, especially when you hear that some emperors tried to prolong their lives by sleeping with virgins, particularly young ones, thinking it would renew their yang. That rumour swirls especially hard around Emperor Wu of Han, who supposedly surrounded himself with teenage girls and avoided climax altogether. Did it work? Well, he lived into his 70s, which in ancient China might as well be immortality. Cosmic calendar and concubine carry-out. But not all immortality quests are so clinical. Some are bizarre. One late Ming emperor reportedly employed a team of astrologers to chart the perfect time for sex to ensure maximum spiritual gain. That meant sleeping with concubines at 3:17 a.m. while facing east on the second Tuesday of a lunar month. If that doesn't kill the mood, nothing will. Still, death looms. You've heard about rulers who tried to cheat it, only to accelerate their own decline. Mercury poisoning, celibacy-induced depression, ritual exhaustion. Some scholars argue that the obsession with immortality actually made emperors easier to manipulate. If the right alchemist promised eternal life, he could basically become the emperor's shadow. And in the back of your mind, you keep circling back to Qin Shi Huang. He didn't just build walls and armies. He chased eternal life across the entire empire. He sent fleets eastward to find the legendary Isles of the Immortals, where sages supposedly lived off dew and moonlight. None of the expeditions returned. Some say they fled to avoid punishment. Others say they found paradise and just didn't feel like sharing. Scholars today still debate whether these voyages were real, allegorical, or an elaborate PR campaign to hide the fact that the emperor was terrified of dying alone. As you sip a bitter tonic made of crushed pearls and deer antler, you start to see a truth no one says aloud. Sex and death are linked for emperors in a way that's almost poetic. You sleep with hundreds of women not to celebrate life, but to fight death. Every ritual, every guarded night, every breathless encounter, it's all a kind of gamble. If you win, you extend your life. If you lose, you get remembered as another cautionary tale, like Emperor Ai, who was rumoured to be so besotted with his male lover that he ignored state affairs and was ultimately overthrown. Of course, no one will dare say any of this to your face. Your court will continue to bring you elixirs, young maidens, and celestial charts. Your eunuchs will still arrange midnight encounters, like logisticians planning a campaign, and your alchemists will assure you that your essence is glowing. But you're starting to suspect the truth. The pursuit of immortality might be killing you faster than time ever could. The Palace Playbook, Eunuchs, Power and Puzzling Practices. You're lying awake again, not from worry, though there's plenty of that, but because your mind is busy spinning with diagrams of breath, arrows of energy, and swirling vortexes of yin and yang. You've been reading the Taoist sex manuals again. The really old ones that the eunuchs only bring out under strict orders. These aren't some dusty scrolls filled with pretty poetry. They're anatomical, esoteric, and deeply weird. One of them begins with a line that makes you blink. When the jade stork enters the golden gate, the celestial dragon awakens. Right, so tonight, You're going to awaken a dragon with your anatomy. You laugh softly, then stop, because even laughter feels like it might drain your energy. That's the thing about Taoist bedroom practices. They make everything feel sacred and slightly dangerous. According to these teachings, sex isn't just pleasure or a way to make heirs. It's a metaphysical exercise, a chance to align yourself with the cosmos, to strengthen your spirit, and ideally, to live forever. You've already met with your Taoist master, an old man with eyebrows so long they curl like calligraphy strokes. He's shown you where to press, when to breathe, and most importantly, when not to finish. Ejaculation is death, he warns with a raspy whisper. Retention is immortality. So now you're practicing the ancient art of jing cultivation. It's less of a romp and more of a slow, disciplined ritual, like tantric yoga performed in silence, with the pressure of heavenly balance looming over your bed. The goal is to have sex without climax, to circulate the aroused energy through your meridians like water through irrigation ditches. You're supposed to inhale deeply at the moment of peak sensation, lock your muscles, roll your eyes upward, and pull the seed back into the spine. Sounds romantic, right? Your concubine tonight is experienced. She's been trained for this. In fact, some women were specifically raised from childhood within Taoist sects just to become partners in this practice. They are not just lovers, they're energy batteries, carefully selected for their yin purity, their age, and sometimes even their star sign. Tonight's partner, Lady Shu, has skin like fresh porcelain, and a way of moving that's more like a ritual dance than seduction. She bows, whispers a mantra you barely catch, and helps you into the proper position. This is less foreplay and more astronomy. The two of you move together slowly, deliberately, each thrust paired with an inhalation, each exhale meant to ground your essence. It's not just about holding back, it's about transforming the urge into vitality. Supposedly, if done perfectly, you can see visions, flying dreams, or at least avoid gout for a few more decades. And Lady Shu? She's focused. Her eyes are half-lidded in trance, and she's murmuring things about jade palaces and dew on lotuses. It's beautiful, sort of, but it's also exhausting. Part of you starts to wonder, is this sex or a very elaborate high-stakes nap? There are even warnings in the texts that overdoing this, yes, even sacred sex, can lead to loss of soul, spontaneous nosebleeds, and ghost sightings. One story claims that Emperor Huan of the Western Han tried to force a girl to have ritual sex every night for a month, and she started levitating and weeping blood. Maybe apocryphal, maybe a ghost story told by court physicians to make you take a night off. History's verdict: lust, loss, and lessons learned. Of course, you're not the only one who ever found these rituals overwhelming. There's a story about Emperor Cheng of the Han dynasty, who was so committed to following Taoist bedroom techniques that he reportedly died trying to withhold climax with his favourite consort, Zhao Feiyan. Her beauty was legendary. Poets wrote that she danced on the palms of men and left no footprints, and he, poor fool, tried to ride that cosmic wave until his essence broke like a cheap vase. The irony: no air, no immortality, just an embarrassing line in the historical record. But not all scholars buy these stories. Some say the idea that emperors practiced sex as spiritual cultivation was more legend than fact, a way for later dynasties to legitimate or romanticize decadent rulers. Others argue the opposite, that we've underestimated how seriously Taoist metaphysics shaped imperial policy, especially during the Tang and Song periods, when the blending of spirituality, medicine, and sex was especially dense. The truth likely lies somewhere in between, part genuine practice, part political theatre. You're starting to feel that theatre now. There's a eunuch stationed outside the curtain, listening to the rhythm of your breathing. He'll log the encounter, check on your pulse later, and even record how many thrusts occurred. That's right, Imperial Seal comes with performance metrics, and if that sounds invasive, wait until you hear about the essence reports that go directly to court healers. Too sluggish, and you might be prescribed rhinoceros horn powder or tiger bone wine. Too vigorous, and you might be banned from sexual activity for a week to preserve your chi. So as you lie here, Lady Shu resting beside you like a living statue, your limbs tingling with what might be energy or maybe just exhaustion, you begin to grasp the weight of it all. This isn't passion, it's pressure. It's a choreographed ritual written in muscle tension and breath. And yes, it's kind of sexy in a mystic performance art kind of way, but it's also exhausting. There's no cuddling afterward, no whispered jokes, just silence and the knowledge that you've either added one more drop of vitality to your cup or accidentally tipped the whole thing over. As your Taoist master would say, each drop saved is a day extended. You're not entirely convinced, but in the quiet hours before dawn you like to believe it might be true. The eunuch empire. Power behind the screens. You're sitting in the Hall of Supreme Harmony, pretending to listen as your ministers drone on about harvest quotas and provincial disputes, but your mind is still drifting back to last night's silent, breath-synchronized lovemaking. Or was it breath combat? Hard to say. Either way, it left you with sore legs and a vague sense that your spleen might have moved. But before you can dwell too long on your internal alchemy progress, there's a tap at your side and a discreet whisper. The eunuchs request your attention. You nod and rise with practiced gravity. Another meeting, another problem. But this one's happening behind screens. You know what that means? It's bedroom business. In the world of Chinese emperors, there's no true separation between the court and the bed. Politics doesn't stop when the silk robes come off. And right now, your gatekeepers to that intimate world, the eunuchs, have something urgent to report. More than just butlers, the eunuchs' influence. Now let's talk about eunuchs. These men are your most trusted advisors, assistants, and occasionally secretaries of seduction. Their roles aren't just to shuffle paperwork and light incense. They are the very glue that holds your harem together. They've been surgically edited. Yes, that kind of edited, to ensure absolute loyalty and of course to eliminate any chance that the imperial bloodline gets mixed. Their lack of equipment makes them trustworthy. In theory. Though in practice, they've still managed to climb to immense power through sheer cunning. Inside your private hall, the lead eunuch bows low, his voice like parchment rustling. Your Majesty, there was a disturbance last night in the southern pavilion. You raise an eyebrow. Disturbance is never a good word. Turns out 2 lower-ranked concubines got into a screaming match over whose upapi was more likely to be chosen this week. The fight escalated to broken porcelain, bruised cheeks, and one collapsed incense burner. These are the kinds of quiet battles that make up life in the harem, simmering rivalries, jealousy over scheduling, and calculated attempts to get closer to you, the walking embodiment of divine power, and it's all managed by eunuchs. These men carry your orders, keep the concubines in line, and act as silent witnesses to your most private moments. They even take part in inspection rituals. Yes, they check the concubines before and after a nightly visit, ensuring cleanliness, confirming that no spells or poisons are hidden in garments, and noting any injuries or peculiarities. It's all very thorough, and depending on your mood, either deeply comforting or completely creepy. Castration, riches, and royal romances. Eunuchs aren't just glorified butlers, though some become power brokers. During the Tang dynasty, one eunuch named Gao Lishi was so powerful that he basically ran the court from behind the curtain. Another during the Ming commanded armies. Eunuchs controlled information flow, access to your person, and even sometimes falsified reports to protect their favourites or eliminate rivals. You think the ministers are scary? Try crossing a eunuch who knows every intimate detail of your schedule, preferences, and weaknesses. Let's not ignore the elephant, or rather, the knife in the room. Becoming a eunuch wasn't just about getting a job at the palace. It involved a painful, often crude operation done in unsanitary conditions, with no guarantee of survival. Some were castrated as children by desperate families, hoping to earn favour at court. Others did it voluntarily, chasing the dream of status, proximity to power and wealth. Because yes, a successful eunuch could amass enormous fortunes. He couldn't pass on a name or seed, but he could own land, influence appointments, and even help place an emperor on the throne. In a strange, twisted way, eunuchs lived both above and below society. They were mocked by scholars, feared by generals, and needed by everyone. Some were spiritual guides, others meticulous record keepers, and a few were manipulators of the highest order. And you? You live among them daily, entrusting them with the safety of your body, your lineage, and your throne. Kind of makes you wonder who's really in charge, doesn't it? The sacred burden, the Empress Dowager's grip. One particularly quirky practice you've come to accept is the ritual of the bedtime escort. Each night, a eunuch supervises your selected concubine's journey to your chambers. She's bathed, powdered, and wrapped in ceremonial silk. Then, here's the weird part, she's lifted and carried by two eunuchs like a sacred offering. Her feet are never to touch the ground during transit. This supposedly prevents her from being tampered with or bringing in evil energy. Also, it guarantees that no woman sneaks into your room uninvited, which actually has happened in the past. Legend has it that during the Song dynasty, a concubine faked her name tag and bribed a low-level eunuch to get in. She was found out later, but not before becoming pregnant. That scandal ended with several exiles, and the eunuch in question was not seen again. Of course, all this makes the eunuch's job more than logistical. It's spiritual too. They are seen as liminal figures, not quite male, not quite female, occupying a third mysterious space that makes them perfect intermediaries. Some even become respected shamans or interpreters of omens. If a eunuch dreams of blood, it might signal war. If he dreams of peaches, it could mean a birth. Dreams are recorded, analysed, discussed in morning briefings. You smile, remembering the time one old eunuch insisted that a dream about frogs meant you should avoid eating fish for a month. You humoured him. Then a rival noble choked to death on a cart bone. Coincidence? Maybe. Maybe not. There's still debate among modern historians about just how much power eunuchs wielded. Some argue they were scapegoats for broader systemic failures, blamed when dynasties collapsed or emperors became decadent. Others point to hard evidence. Edicts signed, wars launched, and empresses chosen under eunuch guidance. Either way, their presence was inescapable, and you, like every emperor before, depend on them. Back in the present, the lead eunuch concludes his report and bows. You thank him, ask for the two feuding concubines to be assigned meditation duties, and then you pause. "Bring me Lady May tonight," you say softly. The eunuch nods, makes a discreet note and backs away into the shadows. Another name added to the scroll, another night orchestrated, another secret kept. And as you return to court business, nodding at a proposal for canal repairs, you can't help but marvel at the strangeness of your reality. You are the most powerful man in the world, and your nights, your most intimate personal moments, are scripted, supervised, and recorded by a staff of surgically altered bureaucrats with better memory than any of your generals. Somewhere outside, a bell rings 3 times. A concubine's bath begins, and you wonder, just for a moment, what it would be like to be normal. The Empress Dowager, a mother's love or a spider's web. It's late afternoon and the light is beginning to soften into that honeyed glow that makes even the stone lions of the courtyard look drowsy. You've finished court early, one of the rare perks of being emperor, when you feel like skipping the details of regional grain disputes. Instead, you're headed toward the western wing of the palace, where someone has been waiting all day. Her name is not recorded in public documents, though everyone knows who she is. She is the most powerful woman in the palace, second only to you, and in some ways, far more dangerous. She is the Empress Dowager. She doesn't rise when you enter. She remains on her carved rosewood throne, her expression unreadable behind layers of powder, jewels and perfectly arranged disinterest. It's an art form, appearing both unimpressed and unchallengeable. Her fingers rest lightly on a small carved phoenix, and her lips twitch upward just slightly. She's pleased to see you, or amused. With her, it's often hard to tell. Tonight, you're not here as her son, stepson, or distant relative, depending on how the dynasty lines were arranged. You're here as emperor, facing the matriarch who once held, and may still hold, the real reins of power. And she, as always, is testing you. The Empress Dowager knows every rule of the palace. She helped write some of them. She's navigated decades of intrigue, fended off assassins, silenced rivals, and strategically placed her favourites in the harem to control your father, or your brother, or you. In her presence, Even the boldest generals bite their tongues. And yes, once upon a time she was also just a concubine. Clever, young, ambitious, and very, very lucky. You're thinking about all of that as you sip the tea she offers. Osmanthus, light and sweet, but possibly symbolic. Everything with her is symbolic. You remember the stories about Empress Dowager Cixi, who essentially ruled China from behind a curtain for nearly half a century. She started as a low-ranked concubine, bore a son, and manipulated her way into regency with unmatched political precision. When male ministers objected to her involvement, she literally sat behind a silk screen during court meetings and spoke her will through intermediaries. Power without ever having to be seen. Cixi also wielded power in the bedchamber, or rather, through it. She decided who saw the emperor and when, especially if the emperor was too young or too ill to make those decisions himself. There are whispers that she sometimes arranged visits from specific concubines, not for their beauty, but for their families, noble lineages that could be kept close or kept down depending on her whims. Rumour has it she even hand-picked bed testers, women who would warm the emperor's bed before the actual concubine arrived, under the pretense of checking the temperature. Imagine that job title. Scholars debate whether Cixi was a monster or a misunderstood genius. Some called her a tyrant who diverted funds to remodel palaces, while foreign powers loomed at the gates. Others say she was a savvy operator, the only one holding the fragile Qing court together, while the world outside modernized at terrifying speed. The truth, like everything in the palace, probably lies somewhere in the folds of her embroidered sleeves. The scent of suspicion, osmanthus and omen. You're not Cixi's son, but the Empress Dowager across from you has the same energy. She can destroy a man with a sigh, and when she leans in to speak, it's not gossip, it's strategy. "You've been favouring Lady May lately," she says softly, eyes fixed on your teacup. You pause. There it is. The real reason she summoned you, she's been watching, calculating, perhaps even interrogating the eunuchs you trust. Nothing goes unnoticed in her part of the palace. She has a gentle nature, you say carefully. She has a dangerous uncle, she replies, just as carefully. And just like that, the entire room shifts. You're no longer talking about preference or romance. You're talking about court politics, factional alliances, and the terrifyingly real possibility that too much time spent with the wrong woman could tip the balance of power. In the imperial court, desire is dangerous, not because of what it satisfies, but because of what it promises. An emperor's affection is a currency. Every time you favour someone, you're investing in a family, a faction, maybe even a future rebellion. It's no wonder that the Empress Dowager, once a concubine herself, understands this better than anyone. She is the living example of what a clever woman can do with limited access to power and a brilliant sense of timing. And she knows, probably better than you, how the harem works behind the walls. She's likely placed her own favourites among the concubines. Women who report back to her, who watch what you eat, who smile and whisper things meant to steer you gently in her preferred direction. You think you're in control of your knights, but more than once you've woken up feeling like the pawn in someone else's game. Still, you're emperor, at least officially, and you remind her of that with a small, deliberate smile. "I'll keep your concerns in mind," you say, rising, "but I trust my judgment." She doesn't respond at first, then ever so slowly she bows her head, less a sign of submission than acknowledgement. The conversation is over, but the war continues. As you walk back to your quarters, past marble courtyards and flickering lanterns, you realize just how much of your sex life is not about passion, but control. It's not just about who lies in your bed, it's about who arranged for them to be there, and what ripple that choice will send through the palace. In this world, the Empress Dowager is the grand conductor of desire, not by seduction, but by surveillance. Later that night, Lady May joins you as requested. She's beautiful, kind, and just shy enough to be endearing, but you can't shake the echo of your earlier conversation. As she pours your wine and smiles at you beneath long lashes, you wonder, is she in love with you, or simply playing the role handed to her? Does she know what her uncle is planning? Does she care? You reach for her hand anyway, because even emperors get lonely. Even gods on thrones need someone to look at them like a man, not a title. But when she leans in, Her perfume suddenly smells like osmanthus. And you wonder if that too is a message. The next morning, you wake with a lingering ache in your chest. Not from illness, not from exertion, but from something you can't quite name. Maybe it's the perfume again. Osmanthus. It clung to Lady May's robe, her skin, even the sheets. Or maybe it's the aftertaste of suspicion, curling in your stomach like spoiled wine. You've spent your whole life surrounded by women trained to please you, serve you, and spy on you. And while last night was soft, almost sweet, it was also a reminder that in your world, intimacy is a performance, and trust is as rare as a snowflake in midsummer Beijing. Still, the day rolls forward. You attend to a few perfunctory scrolls, meet briefly with the Minister of Rights, and approve 3 garden redesigns that, frankly, all look the same. But by early afternoon, something odd catches your eye. One of the eunuchs, a young man you barely recognize, seems unusually agitated. He's whispering intently with another, older eunuch, gesturing subtly towards the imperial kitchens. You pretend not to notice, but your imperial instincts are tingling. Something's brewing, and it smells less like sandalwood and more like trouble. You consider your options. You could dismiss it. Palace eunuchs are notorious gossips, and most of their whispers are just hot air and petty squabbles. Or you could act. A quiet investigation, a discreet word with your chief eunuch, or even a direct summons for the agitated young man. The Forbidden City is a labyrinth of secrets, and knowing which thread to pull can mean the difference between a minor inconvenience and a full-blown rebellion. Your mind races through possibilities. A disgruntled cook, perhaps. A slighted concubine using food as a weapon. Or something far more sinister, an attempt on your life, hidden in the very nourishment meant to sustain you. The imperial kitchens are a hotbed of power struggles too. Control the food, control the emperor. Poison was, after all, a favoured method of elimination in these halls for centuries. You decide to be subtle. You can't show fear or overt suspicion. That would only embolden any plotters. Instead, you call for your most trusted personal eunuch, the wizened Eunuch Li, who has been at your side since your boyhood. His face, etched with 1,000 secrets, always remains impassive, but his eyes miss nothing. Eunuch Li, you say, your voice calm and measured. I find myself with a sudden craving for a very specific type of steamed bun. The ones from the outer kitchens prepared by that new cook. What was his name? The one with the faint scar above his left eye. Eunuch Li's eyes flicker, almost imperceptibly. The outer kitchens are for the lower-ranked servants, a world away from your own meticulously controlled culinary domain. And the scar detail? A fabrication. You're giving him a code. You're telling him to investigate the whisper you just saw, specifically focusing on the new kitchen staff. As your majesty commands, Eunuch Li replies, his voice like rustling silk. He bows deeply, his movements economical and swift, and glides away. Now, you wait. The tension in the air, previously unnoticed by anyone but you, feels palpable. You return to your scrolls, feigning interest in grain quotas, but every rustle of silk, every distant murmur from the courtyards, feels magnified. You're playing a dangerous game, one where the stakes are your life and your throne. The afternoon stretches on, each minute feeling like an hour. Finally, as twilight paints the palace walls in hues of violet and grey, Eunuch Li returns. He approaches your throne, bows, and signals for your other attendants to withdraw. You are alone, save for your shadow. Your Majesty, he begins, his voice still low, but with a subtle urgency you haven't heard before. The steamed buns. They are not as simple as they appear. He details his findings. The young eunuch you observed was indeed agitated, his whispers concerning a new delivery of medicinal herbs to the imperial kitchen. These weren't standard culinary spices. They were rare, potent, and acquired through irregular channels, bypassing the usual stringent inspections. Furthermore, the new cook with the scar doesn't exist. There's a new, ambitious assistant cook, a distant cousin to a low-ranking concubine recently favoured by the Empress Dowager. And this assistant cook, Eunuch Li, has discovered, has been quietly experimenting with new flavor enhancers for your meals. The pieces click into place. The Empress Dowager, Lady May's dangerous uncle, a new, untraceable substance. This isn't just about food. It's about subtle, untraceable influence, perhaps even slow poisoning. The flavor enhancers could be anything from a debilitating sedative to a slow-acting toxin designed to gradually weaken your mind and body, making you pliable, or worse, clearing the path for another claimant to the throne. The Empress Dowager's influence is extensive, Eunuch Lee concludes, his voice a bare whisper now, and her methods are often indirect. You feel a cold knot in your stomach. The world you inhabit, a gilded cage of power and luxury, is also a viper's nest. The warmth of Lady May's hand, the scent of osmanthus, was it all a beautiful, deadly trap? Your trust, a weapon turned against you. What's your next move, Emperor? Do you confront the Empress Dowager directly, risking a public power struggle that could destabilize the empire? Do you quietly eliminate the assistant cook and the eunuchs involved, sending a silent, brutal message? Or do you play an even longer game, pretending ignorance while you gather more evidence and turn the tables on your hidden enemies? This game of imperial survival just got a lot more interesting, and a lot more dangerous. Hello, aspiring time traveler. Get ready to ditch your memory foam, because we're about to plunge headfirst into a world where everything you thought you knew about love and relationships gets gloriously, hilariously, and surprisingly turned on its head. Forget everything your history teacher told you about ancient civilizations being stuffy and repressed. Ancient Egypt, they were basically the free-spirited, open-minded rebels of the ancient world. Welcome to ancient Egypt, where normal is backwards. When the Greek historian Herodotus first stepped off that boat onto Egyptian soil, he basically lost his mind. I mean, imagine visiting a place where everything you thought was normal is completely backwards. That's exactly what Egypt was for him. He straight up accused them of reversing the ordinary practices of mankind. Marriage, love, public affection, all of it seemed upside down to this poor guy. And honestly, he wasn't entirely wrong. The way Egyptians approached relationships was pretty wild compared to other ancient civilizations. You see, the Greeks kept their women practically locked away, shrouded in mystery, barely allowed out of the house. Egyptian women, on the other hand, they were out and about, running businesses, making deals, and generally living their best lives with a shocking amount of freedom. It was like a cultural slap in the face for poor old Herodotus, who probably went home and immediately wrote a sternly worded letter to his local philosopher about the moral decay of the world. Oh, and if you're enjoying these stories, I'd really appreciate a like or subscribe. It helps me know you're out there, listening. I'm super curious where you're all listening from, so drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. It always blows my mind how people are falling asleep to this all over the world, from a cozy evening in Bucharest to a bright morning on the other side of the planet. Knowing that you're drifting off to tales of ancient romance makes my day. Alright, find that cozy spot, take a nice slow breath and just let your body sink into whatever you're lying on. We're heading back to ancient Egypt, so congratulations. You just woke up in the land of pharaohs, pyramids, and surprisingly progressive relationships. The first thing that hits you is the heat. Not the gentle warmth of modern central heating, but that bone-deep desert heat that makes your skin prickle with sweat almost instantly, as if your pores are staging a tiny protest. You're lying on a reed mat that crackles beneath you, a far cry from your memory foam mattress back home. Through the small window cut high into the mud brick wall, you can see the sky is just beginning to lighten, turning that distinctive Egyptian blue that artists have tried to capture for centuries, a blue so intense it almost hums. The smells around you are just as intense. There's the earthy scent of the Nile, a muddy sweetness that seems to permeate everything, clinging to the very air. Closer, you catch whiffs of cooking fires starting up outside, the tantalizing aroma of bread baking somewhere nearby, promising a simple but satisfying breakfast. And then there's another, more exotic smell, the distinct aroma of kefi incense burning in a small copper dish near the door. It's a mixture of myrrh, frankincense, and raisins, a concoction that was supposed to please the gods and purify the home, though you suspect it also did a pretty good job of masking the less pleasant odours of village life. You sit up, and your bare feet touch the packed earth floor, surprisingly cool against your skin despite the growing heat of the day. Outside, you hear voices calling to each other, the rhythmic clatter of pottery as someone prepares for the day's tasks, and the distant bray of a donkey pulling a cart, the soundtrack of ancient morning life. Life is already bustling, and the sun has barely kissed the horizon. Welcome to Egypt. The year is... well, Egyptians wouldn't recognize our calendar system, but let's say it's around 1400 BCE, during what we now call the New Kingdom. This was the era of legendary pharaohs like Akhenaten, Tutankhamun, and the formidable Hatshepsut, a woman who ruled Egypt as a king, beard and all. You're about to learn something pretty fascinating about this place. Love and marriage here aren't what you'd expect at all. Now, if you're lying there thinking about all those History Channel documentaries about Egyptian pharaohs marrying their sisters and weird incest stuff, I'm going to stop you right there. Yes, royal marriages were often between siblings, a way to keep the royal bloodline pure and consolidated power within the ruling family. But that was basically just for the royal family. The top 1% of the 1%. Regular folks like you and me? Totally different story. For most ancient Egyptians, marriage was surprisingly practical, yet deeply personal. A fascinating mix of business arrangement and genuine affection that would honestly put some modern relationships to shame. They weren't afraid to blend the pragmatic with the passionate. So, here's the first thing that would have blown Herodotus's mind, and probably yours too. Marriage in ancient Egypt wasn't a religious ceremony at all. In fact, there wasn't even a ceremony. No white dress, no walking down the aisle, no "you may now kiss the bride," no awkward speeches from distant relatives. None of that pomp and circumstance. You shift slightly on your reed mat, finding a more comfortable position, the sounds of the waking village continuing outside your window, women talking as they head to the Nile for water, the cheerful laughter of children, the rhythmic scraping of dough being kneaded for the morning bread, a reassuring symphony of daily life. Basically, here's how Egyptian marriage worked. When a young man was ready, usually around 16 to 20 years old, he'd look for a partner. Girls were typically younger, often just after their first menses, around 12 to 14. Young by our standards? Sure. But when life expectancy was a grim 30 to 35 years for common folk, you didn't exactly have time to spend a decade finding yourself before settling down and producing heirs. Time was of the essence. You stretch and stand up, your joints cracking pleasantly, a little protest from your ancient body. Across the small room, a clay jar of water sits waiting. You dip a cloth into it and wipe the night sweat from your face and neck. The water is cool against your skin, a small mercy in this relentless heat. The most important thing for marriage wasn't love, at least not initially. It was stability. A man needed to have a job, some kind of income, his own house, a basic foundation for a family. Women weren't expected to bring financial stability to the marriage, but they did bring essential domestic skills and often a dowry of household items, things like linens, pottery, furniture, maybe even a few prized cooking implements. When families agreed on a match, and yes, parents usually had a major say, acting like ancient matchmakers, they'd draw up what was essentially a prenuptial agreement. This contract laid out what property each person brought into the marriage, and, crucially, what would happen to it if things didn't work out. Pretty modern, right? It showed a remarkable foresight for protecting women's assets. But here's where it gets really interesting. Once all the negotiations were done, there was no big ceremony, no priest blessing the union, no signatures on a marriage certificate. The woman simply gathered her belongings and moved into the man's house. That's it. That was the whole wedding. The moment she crossed his threshold with her stuff, they were considered married, as legally binding as any modern ceremony. Outside your window, you notice a young woman carrying a small wooden chest toward a house down the street. Following her are two older women with baskets of linens, pottery, and other household goods. You're witnessing exactly this. A new bride moving her possessions into her husband's home, the beginning of a marriage, ancient Egyptian style. The young woman looks nervous but excited. clutching a small carved bird in her free hand, perhaps a good luck charm. The neighbours have come out to watch and call good wishes, their voices blending into a cheerful murmur. There's a festive atmosphere, even without a formal ceremony. A few musicians have appeared, playing simple reed flutes and small hand drums, their melodies weaving through the morning air. The rhythm is hypnotic, a gentle pulse that seems to match the beating of your own heart as you watch this intimate slice of history unfolding before you. Your body feels heavy and comfortable as you lean against the cool mud brick wall, observing this scene from across the millennia. Now, you might be thinking, this all sounds pretty transactional. And yeah, there was definitely a practical aspect to it. Marriage was about alliances, producing heirs, and creating a stable household unit in a challenging environment. But here's the thing that made Egyptian marriage different from a lot of other ancient cultures, and truly revolutionary for its time. Women had rights, like serious rights. Rights that women in Greece or Rome or basically anywhere else wouldn't get for thousands of years. For starters, that prenuptial agreement we talked about. It protected the woman's property. Whatever she brought into the marriage remained hers. The husband couldn't touch it. She could also inherit property from her parents independently of her husband, and she could buy and sell property without his permission. This meant an Egyptian woman could be a landowner, a businesswoman, an independent economic force, a stark contrast to her counterparts in other ancient societies, where women were often legally considered property themselves. You decide to follow the small wedding procession, your bare feet padding softly on the packed earth of the street, the fine dust rising slightly with each step. The heat is building as the sun climbs higher, and you can feel sweat beginning to trickle down your back, a constant companion in this climate. The smell of bread baking, now mingled with the tantalizing aroma of roasting fish, makes your stomach rumble. You haven't eaten yet today, and the thought of food is a powerful motivator. The crowd turns down another street, a narrow alleyway that provides some blessed shade, and you follow, drawn by the music and the contagious cheer of the celebration. You feel your shoulders relax a bit as you escape the direct sun, a small moment of relief. What's really wild is that Egyptian women could divorce their husbands just like that. If things weren't working out, a woman could simply leave, taking all her original property plus a divorce settlement that was usually about 1/3 of the marital assets. In a world where women were basically considered property themselves in most places, this was revolutionary. Imagine Herodotus's face when he heard that. Of course, men could divorce their wives too, but they'd have to pay up. And either way, any children from the marriage would stay with the mother. The father might provide some support, but custody defaulted to mom. Again, mind-blowing for the ancient world. This legal framework suggests a society that placed significant value on the well-being and autonomy of women, a concept almost unheard of elsewhere. The procession has stopped at a modest but well-kept house, its mud brick walls adorned with fresh paint in vibrant blues and reds. The young bride is being welcomed by her new husband, a man perhaps a few years older than her, his face flushed with a mixture of nervousness and eagerness to please. He looks like he just won the lottery, which, in a way, he has. His friends are clapping him on the back, making jokes that make him blush even deeper. The bride's mother is wiping away tears, but they seem to be happy ones, tears of pride and relief. You lean against a wall across the street, your body feeling pleasantly heavy as you observe this intimate moment, this simple beginning happening before you. This simple, ceremony-free wedding is the foundation of Egyptian family life, a bedrock of community and tradition. But the really interesting thing about Egyptian marriage wasn't just the legal stuff. It was the emotions. Despite marriages often being arranged for practical reasons, Egyptians actually valued romantic love a lot. It wasn't just a byproduct, it was an aspiration. You close your eyes for a moment, feeling the rough texture of the mud brick wall against your back, grounding you in this ancient moment, connecting you to the lives lived here thousands of years ago. When you open them again, the bride and groom are sharing a shy smile. Despite all the practical arrangements that brought them here, there's a genuine warmth between them, a spark of affection that promises something deeper. The evidence for love in ancient Egypt is everywhere once you start looking. Their poetry is full of it, passionate, romantic verses that could rival anything from Shakespeare to your favourite modern love song. Imagine hearing this. To hear your voice is pomegranate wine to me. I draw life from hearing it. Could I see you with every glance, it would be better for me than to eat or to drink. Beautiful, right? This kind of love poetry was incredibly popular, especially during the New Kingdom period. Egyptians loved to express their feelings about each other, and they weren't shy about physical affection either. They were surprisingly tactile. As you watch, the new husband takes his wife's hand and leads her into their home. The threshold moment, the actual marriage in Egyptian terms, has already happened, but this entrance together is clearly meaningful to them both, a symbolic step into their shared future. The crowd cheers, the musicians play more enthusiastically, and someone breaks out jars of beer to share around. You can almost taste the thick, slightly sweet Egyptian beer in the air. It was much heartier than our modern beers, more like a meal in a jar, often flavoured with dates or honey, and surprisingly nutritious. The celebration is getting livelier now, and you feel your own spirits lifting as you watch, a warmth spreading through you that has nothing to do with the sun. Now, here's another fascinating thing about Egyptian marriage. They believed it continued into the afterlife. Egyptians were obsessed with eternity, right? All those pyramids and mummies and elaborate tombs. Well, they thought a good marriage would last forever, literally. Couples were often buried together, or in adjoining tombs, with paintings showing them holding hands, embracing, sometimes even with their children around them, a beautiful tableau of eternal family life. That's why being a good spouse was so important. Nobody wanted to be stuck with a jerk for all eternity. This belief actually encouraged people to work on their relationships and treat each other well because, hey, till death do us part wasn't a thing. It was forever and ever, including the afterlife. It put a whole new spin on marital counselling. The wedding celebration is spreading now, with neighbours bringing out food to share. The scent of fresh bread, roasted fish from the Nile, and sweet honey cakes fills the air. Your stomach growls again, a polite but firm reminder that you still haven't eaten. A kind-looking older woman, her face lined with a lifetime of sun and smiles, notices you standing alone and gestures for you to join them. You hesitate. You're not exactly dressed in period-appropriate clothing. Your modern attire would be anachronistic, to say the least. But her smile is so welcoming that you find yourself moving forward anyway. She presses a piece of warm, fresh bread into your hand. It's denser than modern bread, with a nutty flavour from the coarse ground emmer wheat it's made from. The crust is perfectly crisp, the inside still steaming. It might be the most delicious thing you've ever tasted, or maybe it's just the magic of eating bread that was baked 3,400 years ago, a literal taste of history. Your body feels increasingly heavy and comfortable as you eat, the simple pleasure of good food and friendly company washing over you, a profound sense of peace. You find a spot to sit on a low stone wall, your muscles relaxing as you continue to observe the celebration, feeling fully immersed in this ancient moment. Love, lust and lotus flowers, the bedroom and beyond. Let's talk about what happened in the bedroom, because that's where things get really interesting, and probably where poor Herodotus truly needed a fainting couch. Unlike many ancient cultures, and honestly plenty of modern ones, Egyptians had a pretty healthy attitude towards sex. They saw it as a natural, normal part of life, not something shameful or solely for procreation. It was a source of pleasure, connection and joy. And this is where poor Herodotus really lost it. Egyptians were openly affectionate with each other. They held hands in public, embraced, and generally weren't shy about showing their feelings. This was shocking to Greeks like Herodotus, who lived in a society where women were basically kept secluded, veiled, and public displays of affection were a big no-no, considered scandalous. The music has shifted to a slower, more sensual rhythm. A few couples have begun dancing, their movements fluid and graceful. It's not the highly choreographed dancing of temple ceremonies, but something more natural and spontaneous, an expression of joy and connection. The newly married couple joins in, clearly a bit shy with each other still, but moving together with increasing confidence, their movements mirroring each other. You feel your own body swaying slightly to the rhythm, the weight of it pleasantly heavy against the stone wall where you sit. The bread sits warm in your stomach, and someone has handed you a small cup of beer. It's thick and rich, almost like a meal in itself, with a tangy sweetness that's nothing like modern beer. What's more, premarital sex wasn't taboo in ancient Egypt. There's no direct word for virgin in the ancient Egyptian language, which tells you a lot about their attitudes. Young people were expected to explore their sexuality before marriage. It wasn't stigmatized, especially for women. Can you imagine how revolutionary this would seem to Herodotus, or pretty much any other ancient civilization that prized female virginity above all else? Of course, once you were married, fidelity was important. Both husbands and wives were expected to be faithful to each other. Adultery was considered a serious offence, though it was defined somewhat differently for men and women. A married woman sleeping with anyone other than her husband was adultery. For men, sleeping with another man's wife was adultery, but having relations with an unmarried woman wasn't seen the same way. A bit of a double standard perhaps, but still more progressive than many contemporaries. The dance continues, growing more energetic. The bride and groom are laughing now, their initial shyness giving way to uninhibited joy. Their bodies move in harmony, already learning each other's rhythms, a beautiful and organic unfolding of their partnership. It's beautiful to watch this beginning of a partnership that will shape their lives. You sip your beer slowly, feeling the pleasant weight of your body against the wall, the gentle fatigue of the day settling into your muscles. The afternoon sun casts long shadows now, and the quality of light has changed that magical golden hour that photographers chase. A warm, soft glow that bathes the village in a benevolent light. Speaking of expectations in marriage, let's talk about children. Like most ancient societies, Egyptians wanted children. Lots of them. High infant mortality rates meant that having many children was the best way to ensure some survived to adulthood. But unlike other ancient cultures, Egyptians valued daughters almost as much as sons. Almost, but not quite. Sons were still preferred for carrying on the family name and taking care of parents in their old age, but daughters were valued too, seen as blessings and important members of the family unit. And female infanticide, the horrifying practice of killing unwanted baby girls, doesn't seem to have been a thing in Egypt, like it was in many other ancient cultures. Another point for ancient Egypt. The party is winding down now as evening approaches. The bride and groom have retreated into their new home, probably for some well-deserved rest, and neighbours are beginning to drift away, their conversations softening to murmurs. The musicians pack up their instruments, accepting thanks and payment from the bride's father, who looks utterly exhausted, but content. You finish your beer, feeling pleasantly tired now, your limbs feeling heavy, your eyelids wanting to droop, a gentle invitation to sleep. The stone wall beneath you is still warm from the day's heat, comforting against your back, radiating a gentle warmth. But before we wrap up this first part of our journey into Egyptian love and marriage, there's one more fascinating aspect to explore: fertility and pregnancy. Egyptians had a weird but surprisingly effective method for determining if a woman was pregnant. She would pee on barley and emmer wheat seeds. If the barley sprouted, she was supposedly pregnant with a boy. If the emmer wheat sprouted, it would be a girl. If neither sprouted, she wasn't pregnant at all. Here's the crazy part. Modern scientists have tested this, and it actually works about 70% of the time for detecting pregnancy, though not for predicting gender. Turns out, pregnancy hormones in urine can indeed stimulate seed growth. They were accidentally onto something. The streets are quieter now as dusk falls. Oil lamps are being lit in windows, casting a warm, flickering glow, turning the mud brick houses into inviting beacons. The temperature is finally dropping, bringing blessed relief from the day's heat. A cool balm after the sun's relentless embrace. Your body feels increasingly heavy, sinking into a pleasant state of relaxation, your muscles loosening. Childbirth itself was dangerous business, of course. It was handled by midwives, not physicians, and was viewed as a natural process rather than a medical event. Women gave birth in a squatting position on special birthing bricks, surrounded by other women who would provide support and encouragement. Amulets and prayers to gods like Taweret, a hippo goddess who protected mothers and children, and Bes, a dwarf god who scared away evil spirits, were essential parts of the process, a blend of practical support and spiritual protection. If a child survived to age 5, they could generally look forward to a decent lifespan for the ancient world. about 30 to 35 years for common folks, and up to 50 to 60 years for the upper classes, who had better nutrition and didn't have to do hard physical labour. As darkness falls completely, the village grows quiet. Only the occasional bark of a dog or a distant laugh breaks the silence, a gentle hum of life. The stars above are brilliant in a way you never see in the modern world, unpolluted by electric lights. The Milky Way stretches across the sky like a river of stars, a cosmic mirror of their beloved Nile, and you can understand why the Egyptians saw the sky as a cosmic extension of their life-giving river. Your body feels incredibly heavy now, sinking into the ground beneath you, becoming one with the earth. Your breathing has slowed, becoming deep and regular. The sights and sounds of ancient Egypt are fading slightly as your awareness turns inward. You feel yourself drifting, floating on the current of history. The warm stone against your back, the lingering taste of bread and beer on your tongue, the distant music still echoing in your ears. All of it merges into a gentle cocoon of sensation. Tomorrow, we'll explore more about Egyptian love and marriage, the poetry they wrote to each other, the perfumes they wore to seduce their partners, the elaborate tombs they built to be together for eternity. But for now, you're here in this moment, your body relaxed and comfortable, your mind full of images of a world where love and marriage looked very different from our own. The gentle weight of history settles around you, like a comfortable blanket. Your breathing deepens further. The stars wheel slowly overhead, the same stars that watched over ancient Egypt, that will continue to watch over our world long after we're gone. There's comfort in that continuity, that connection across time. Your limbs feel pleasantly heavy, your thoughts growing slower and more dreamlike. The sounds of the village have faded to almost nothing now, just the occasional rustle of palm fronds in the night breeze. Your body feels at peace, sinking deeper into relaxation with each breath as the story of ancient Egyptian love and marriage continues to unfold in your mind, a timeless tale of human connection. The morning sun climbs higher over the mud brick houses, casting long shadows across the narrow streets. You've woken early, your body attuned to the rhythms of this ancient world, where most activity happens before the brutal midday heat sets in. The air still holds a hint of coolness from the night, a fleeting memory of the cool darkness, but it's already evaporating like a dream upon waking, replaced by the creeping warmth of the new day. You stretch, feeling your muscles loosen pleasantly, the last vestiges of sleep melting away. The reed mat beneath you crackles as you sit up, that same earthy smell of the Nile hanging in the air, mingled now with the scent of cooking fires and fresh bread. Your stomach rumbles, a gentle reminder that it's time to find something to eat. Outside, women are already lined up at the communal bread ovens, chatting as they wait for their loaves to bake, their voices a soft murmur. Children dart between houses, playing some game involving small clay tokens, their laughter echoing cheerfully. A couple walks past, their hands casually intertwined, and you remember what you learned yesterday about Egyptian attitudes toward affection and marriage, a refreshing openness you hadn't expected. Speaking of marriage, there's something fascinating about the actual process of finding a spouse in ancient Egypt. While parents often had significant input, acting as wise guides, young people weren't completely without choice. And the courtship process? Honestly, it wasn't that different from modern dating in some ways. Minus the dating apps, of course. You make your way to a small market that's sprung up in a wider section of the street. Vendors have laid out mats with goods for sale, vibrant vegetables, glistening fish from the Nile, colourful beads, simple tools, woven baskets, a tapestry of daily life. You accept a piece of flatbread from a smiling woman who seems to recognise you from yesterday's wedding celebration, her eyes twinkling with warmth. The bread is still warm, slightly chewy, with a nutty flavour that speaks of a simpler, purer grain than modern wheat. As you chew slowly, savouring the unfamiliar yet comforting taste, you notice a young man and woman standing near a stall, selling flowers and perfume oils. They're not touching, but the way they look at each other speaks volumes, a silent language of burgeoning affection. He purchases a small blue lotus flower and offers it to her. She accepts it with a shy smile, bringing it to her nose to inhale its delicate fragrance, a gesture of quiet delight. You're witnessing Egyptian courtship in action. Blue lotus flowers were powerful symbols of love and fertility, associated with rebirth and the sun. They were also mildly psychoactive, producing feelings of relaxation and euphoria when brewed into wine or tea. Not exactly a box of chocolates, but definitely a romantic gesture, and one with added benefits. Your body feels comfortable and at ease as you lean against a mud brick wall, observing this moment across the centuries. The rough texture of the bricks against your back is strangely soothing, grounding you in this ancient reality, connecting you to the very fabric of this past world. Courtship in ancient Egypt involved gifts like flowers, jewelry, or love poems written on papyrus or pottery shards. Young people might meet at religious festivals or family gatherings, or be introduced by their parents. There were no formal dating rituals with specific rules, but there were definitely ways to show interest and attraction, a subtle dance of signals and gestures. The couple has moved on now, walking close together without quite touching, a delicate intimacy. They stop occasionally to look at other market stalls, clearly enjoying this simple time together before marriage might formalize their relationship and the responsibilities of family life set in. You finish your bread and decide to follow them at a respectful distance, curious about this glimpse into ancient romance. Your feet move quietly on the packed earth of the street, your body feeling pleasantly heavy and relaxed despite the growing heat of the day. What's particularly interesting about Egyptian courtship is how straightforward it could be. If a young man was interested in a woman, he might send a female relative as a go-between to speak with her mother. If the initial response was positive, gifts would follow, and eventually the families would meet to discuss more practical matters, laying the groundwork for a stable union. The young couple has stopped again, this time at a stall selling amulets and small statues of the gods. The man points to a figure of Hathor, the goddess of love, beauty and music, often depicted with cow horns and a sun disk. The woman nods, her eyes bright, and he purchases the small statuette for her. Their choices are significant. Hathor wasn't just any goddess, she was specifically associated with feminine love, sexuality and motherhood. By giving her a Hathor amulet, he's making his intentions pretty clear. He sees her as a potential wife and mother, and hopes for a loving, fruitful union. You shift your weight from one foot to the other, feeling the pleasant heaviness in your limbs. The heat is building now, and you notice most people are beginning to seek shade, retreating from the sun's intensifying gaze. The couple does the same, moving beneath an awning where a vendor sells cool drinks, offering a brief respite. Now let's talk about what made a person attractive in ancient Egypt, because it's both familiar and strange to modern eyes. Beauty standards existed, of course, but they were different from what you might expect. For women, the ideal was slim, but with full hips, suggesting fertility, small breasts, and a symmetrical face. Men were ideally broad-shouldered with narrow hips, strong arms, and defined legs. Both genders preferred clear skin, bright eyes, and healthy white teeth. Sound familiar so far? Pretty standard stuff, right? But here's where it gets interesting. Both men and women wore makeup. Heavy black kohl around their eyes, green malachite eyeshadow, rouge for the cheeks and henna for the lips and nails. This wasn't just for beauty. The heavy eye makeup helped protect against the glare of the sun, and even had antibacterial properties that prevented eye infections. Beauty with a practical purpose. Your gaze drifts to a woman arranging jewellery at a nearby stall. Her eyes are dramatically lined with thick black kohl, the lines extending out toward her temples, giving her an almost otherworldly look. The effect is striking against her warm brown skin. You notice that almost everyone around you wears some form of eye makeup, regardless of gender or social status. It's as common as brushing your teeth today. The heat is becoming intense now. You can feel sweat beading on your forehead and upper lip. You wipe it away, wishing you had some of that kohl to protect your eyes from the glare. Your body feels heavy in the heat, your movements becoming slower, more deliberate, almost languid. Egyptians also placed huge importance on scent. Both men and women wore perfumes and scented oils. The wealthier you were, the more complex and expensive your fragrance would be. Common scents included lotus, myrrh, frankincense, cinnamon, and various flowers and resins. Some wealthy people would even wear cones of scented fat on top of their wigs at parties. As the fat melted in the heat, it would release fragrance and condition their skin. Kind of gross by modern standards, but incredibly effective in the dry Egyptian climate. Imagine walking into a party and having scented fat drip onto your shoulders. A true sensory experience, certainly. The couple you've been observing is now seated in the shade, drinking what looks like beer from small pottery cups. They're talking animatedly, their faces bright with interest in each other, their conversation flowing easily. You feel a small surge of happiness for these two people who've been dust for thousands of years. In this moment, they're alive and falling in love. A timeless tableau. Your own body feels increasingly heavy in the midday heat. Your movements are slower, you're breathing deeper, adapting to the ancient rhythm. You find a spot in the shade and sink down, your back against a cool wall, the physical sensations of ancient Egypt, the heat, the scents, the textures, overwhelming but strangely comforting. A full sensory immersion. The domestic scene an eternal embrace. Let's talk about what happened after marriage, when the bride had moved into her husband's home and their life together began. The transition could be difficult, especially for young brides leaving their families for the first time, a bittersweet parting. But Egyptian households often included extended family, so a new wife might find herself living with her husband's parents, siblings and their families too, a built-in support system and a bustling household. The daily routine for a married couple would depend largely on their social status. For most ordinary Egyptians, dawn meant the beginning of the workday. Men would head to the fields, construction sites or workshops, while women typically managed the household. But here's an interesting thing. Women weren't confined to domestic duties. They could work outside the home as priestesses, mourners at funerals, dancers, musicians, or in various crafts. Some even worked alongside their husbands in family businesses or trades. Egyptian women had economic rights that wouldn't be seen again in Western civilization for thousands of years, a testament to their remarkably egalitarian society. Your eyelids feel heavy in the midday heat. Around you, the village has quieted as people retreat indoors for the hottest part of the day, a collective pause. The young couple has disappeared too, perhaps returning to their respective homes until evening brings cooler air and renewed energy. You decide to follow the local custom, finding a quiet, shaded spot to rest. Your body settles comfortably against the ground, the heat making your limbs feel wonderfully heavy and relaxed. Your breathing deepens naturally as you close your eyes, drifting into a light, ancient slumber. When you open them again, the quality of light has changed. The brutal midday sun has softened to the golden glow of late afternoon, painting everything in warm hues. You must have dozed off for a while, your body adapting to the Egyptian rhythm of work in the morning. Rest during the hottest hours and activity again in the evening. You rise, your muscles feeling loose and refreshed, the short rest revitalizing you. The village is coming alive again as people emerge from their homes, refreshed and ready for the cooler hours. The air is filled with conversation, laughter, the clatter of pottery being set out for the evening meal, a gentle reawakening. As the day cools, you notice more couples out walking together, talking and laughing. Public displays of affection were common and accepted in ancient Egypt. In tomb paintings and other artwork, spouses are often shown holding hands, embracing or with their arms around each other's shoulders or waists. This openness extended to their poetry as well. Love poems from ancient Egypt are surprisingly direct about desire and physical attraction. Here's one from the Chester Beatty papyrus that wouldn't feel out of place in a modern love letter. My heart flutters hastily when I think of my love, of you. It lets me not act sensibly. It leaps from its place. A truly universal sentiment. Your feet carry you toward the Nile, where people are gathering as the heat subsides. The great river gleams in the late afternoon light, a ribbon of molten gold winding through the green valley, reflecting the dying sun. Along its banks, couples stroll together, families set out simple picnics, and children splash in the shallows, their joyful shouts echoing across the water. You find a spot on the riverbank, the grass surprisingly soft beneath you. Your body settles comfortably, sinking into the natural contours of the ground. The air here is cooler, carrying the river's breath, and you feel your skin prickle pleasantly with the change in temperature. A welcome sensation. On a nearby blanket, a couple sits close together, sharing a meal from a single plate. They feed each other choice morsels, their heads bent close in conversation, an intimate dance of affection. There's an easy intimacy between them that speaks of a marriage built on genuine affection, not just social obligation. What you're seeing reflects the Egyptian ideal of marriage, a partnership based on mutual respect and, ideally, love. The ancient Egyptians believed that a good marriage should bring joy and comfort to both partners. This is reflected in their wisdom literature, where men are advised to love your wife with proper attention and make her heart glad as long as you live. A truly timeless piece of advice. Your body feels increasingly heavy and comfortable as you sit by the river, watching the life of ancient Egypt unfold around you. The rhythmic sound of the water lapping against the shore synchronizes with your breathing, which has grown deeper and more relaxed, a meditative rhythm. Women in Egyptian marriages had rights that were extraordinary for the ancient world. They could own property independently of their husbands, run businesses, testify in court, and initiate divorce. Marriage contracts protected their financial interests, ensuring they wouldn't be left destitute if the marriage ended. One marriage contract from around 200 BCE states, "If I divorce you, I will give you 20 pieces of silver and return to you all that you brought." Another specifies that the husband must provide a certain amount of grain, oil, and money each month for his wife's support. These were truly progressive legal safeguards. The sun is beginning to set now, painting the sky in shades of gold, orange, and deep blue, a breathtaking tableau. Along the riverbank, oil lamps are being lit, creating pools of warm light as darkness gathers. The couple you've been observing rises, gathering their belongings. They walk hand in hand back towards the village, their silhouettes merging with the growing shadows, two figures becoming one. Your own body feels wonderfully heavy now, sinking deeper into the soft grass. The gentle sounds of the river and distant voices create a soothing backdrop as night falls over ancient Egypt, enveloping you in its ancient embrace. Let's talk about the physical space of an Egyptian marriage. The home. For ordinary Egyptians, houses were typically made of mud brick, with few windows to keep out the heat. They were often simple, with a main room for cooking and daily activities, sleeping areas that might be divided by curtains, and perhaps a roof terrace where family members would sleep during hot nights, seeking cooler air. Furniture was minimal by modern standards. Reed mats served as seating during the day and bedding at night. Wealthier homes might have wooden chairs, stools, and bed frames with woven cord or leather straps supporting a thin mattress. Storage consisted of baskets, pottery jars, and wooden chests. The simplicity might seem austere to modern eyes, but these homes were functional, comfortable, and served as the heart of family life, built for the climate and the community. You imagine the subtle differences in each home, the unique smells of different cooking fires, the personalized arrangements of baskets and mats. The weight of the evening descends fully now, a soft blanket of darkness. Your eyes are heavy. The distant sounds of the village are fading, replaced by the gentle symphony of the night, the chirping of crickets, the rustle of palm fronds in a soft breeze. You feel your consciousness drifting, sinking into the earth beneath you, becoming part of this ancient landscape. The story of ancient Egyptian love and marriage continues to unfold in your mind, a timeless narrative of human connection, affection, and the surprising ways people found joy and meaning in a world so different from our own. You are here, now, in this ancient moment, utterly at peace,